Okay, we will call the meeting to order. Marshall is up to bat.
So the Stafford's fire truck that we've been in the process for too many years of trying to get done, they've got a plan to get it put together, and these are the quotes. Not all that equipment is just for that truck, some of that is for the county. Some of the hose and some of the nozzles, but the pump, the hose reel, and then that second page is a monitor. They didn't get everything put on, so the price is that price instead of that price. There's a 2-inch brass valve that we gotta have.
Looks like it was kind of made out of gold.
Yeah.
What did you say, Chris?
I said it looks like it was made out of gold, the brass valve.
Yeah. Well, it's an
Why
electric.
don't we get 2 or 3 just to keep them on hand?
It's an electric brass valve.
Yeah.
For the monitor?
Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about, trying to get grant?
Yeah, we're writing a grant right now for next year. It would be it's not a matching grant, but it's up to like $5,000 or $5,500. So
But
we're
if you
looking at-
get that grant, it won't go towards this.
It won't go
monitor.
towards this one, but we're looking at purchasing 2 more. So basically next year we would roughly get 1 for free if we get the grant.
So how many monitors do we have in the county?
Right now we have 1. This would be the
No, this
second
way.
one.
I have her come here, I think.
Is there any possible way we can plumb that up and then wait to see if we get the grant?
I mean, we could, yes.
Because if we have 1, I'm assuming that's in St. John, and then we'd have bought this one for Stafford, and then we'd have 2 more. That would probably go to St. John or to Maxville and Hudson.
Correct. Put them on the big 5-ton trucks, and it's really nice because then one person can,
I can see how that'd be good.
we had that big fire down there south of Zenith a couple weeks ago, and Reno County, I called them to assist us because it was just more than we could handle. But all of their big trucks, they put a monitor on every one of them. And they said it's just night and day difference because anymore during the day you have fewer people that can respond, and one person can run that truck and not have to have somebody on the back. But that right there, outside of a few small pieces, should get that truck up and going. I mean, we're gonna have the fittings and wiring and stuff like that, but those are the major items that we need to get that truck up and going, which as soon as we get the stuff, which most of that is less than a week out to get it here. But I'm gonna pull it in over at Stafford at, I believe, Meshberger's shop and start working on it.
Direct drive pump, so it'll be a PTO pump.
No, it's a full unit. It's all one unit. It's a motor, pump, everything.
Did I send you the email too?
It'll be basically, well, we haven't purchased one quite like that, but
This is one that's been sitting over there for the last couple of years.
Last 5 years?
yeah.
Well, the definition of a couple, is that 2, 3?
That's 2.
Is it?
Yeah.
Few years.
The rest of the county has built 4 trucks and have them in 4, is that what we decided? 4 trucks that's had them in service while we've been working on this truck. So once they get that truck done, you talked about you're gonna retire one of the old brush trucks?
Yeah, it's just basically a single wheel 1-ton truck.
So what will they have over there?
So they'll have one small brush truck and 2 big brush trucks,
Okay,
and then the tender.
so they got 2 big brush trucks plus a tender? Or is one of them a tender?
Right now, they have a tender, 2 small brush trucks, and 1 big one.
Okay,
We'll be getting rid of the like I said, I think it's a mid-80s, late 80s Ford pickup.
Okay. So you have that money in your budget?
Actually, yeah, my budget, as of last week, I was less than 50% expended on my budget for the year.
So you think it'd be better to go ahead and spend the money on the monitor and,
I do. I'd like to do it now while they're building the truck, to just go ahead and get it done and be, that way we can have it all there. They don't have to come back later and wire it and everything else.
and the grants that you're gonna be applying for, they're a 50/50 grant?
They're not
I
a,
think so.
so they're a matching grant up to,
64.
it would be a 50/50 grant up to $5,000. So I mean, if we buy something for 10, they'll pay 5.
This one here.
If we buy something
Okay,
for
you got
6,
it.
then
Yeah,
pay 3.
all right.
Okay,
But if we buy something for 11,000, all they're gonna pay is $5,000.
Up to 5,000.
Up to 5,000.
so if we buy a monitor for 5, what are they gonna give us?
So if we buy one monitor and it's $6,500, they're gonna give us $3,250. They're gonna give us half. But
Okay,
if we buy 2 of them and it's $12,000, they're gonna give us 5,000. So I mean, close, you're gonna get basically one for free, almost.
is that grant an ongoing every year grant?
Every year.
So if a guy bought one monitor one year and got 3, then bought another monitor the next year, you'd get another 3, so you'd be 1,000 ahead by buying them over 2 separate years.
So,
Do I need to pencil in there a big nozzle for sure?
I don't know.
I wonder what that was.
I'll make a motion, we accept these 2 quotes from Danco Emergency Department for the Stafford County Fire Department for a total of $16,111.28.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to purchase the equipment from Danco Emergency Equipment for a total of $16,111.28. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Does Kurt need to sign these, or? No, okay.
The next thing is we're needing some more radios. I got a quote out of CDS in Pratt. They quoted me 6 and we changed it up to 10. So that 6,000 that I've got wrote there, that's for 10 radios. But 2 of them radios are actually we're gonna be reimbursed through the city of St. John's for the police department. They were needing a couple radios, so I lumped it all together. We got a better deal on them by buying 10 instead of 6 or 8.
So 1392 is going to the city.
Yes, well, I'll basically pay for the whole invoice and then we'll invoice them for 2 radios. We've had some that have been damaged and lost, and our radio supply is just not there.
Did you guys get rid of all the old radios that's up there that wasn't any good?
We gave some away and the rest we threw away.
Don't buy any of them.
So do I need to put in here that 2 are gonna go to the city?
You know,
Yeah.
Just put the whole cost.
The whole cost is at 6,000, that one right there.
So put in that cost?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we accept the bid from CDS for, I'm assuming these are handheld radios?
Yes.
For the fire department, for $6,961.50.
second.
Motion and second to purchase 10 handheld radios from CDS for 10 of them for a total of $55,69.20. So wait a minute, our cost is
69.
$55,69. Should we include the total cost?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's gonna
total
pay
cost
for the total.
69.
$69,6150. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. We need a signature on that one. There's two places there.
So have you had much pushback on the, I know you guys have cleared out part of the people on the fire department that weren't being active because you're wanting to get everybody where
We've
they
had-
could get so much training.
Right, we've had no issues yet. We've continued to do that. Everybody, all departments, all chiefs are well aware of it. We discuss it every commissioner, or every,
There's a button on the
What
side of
is
your
that?
phone that can silence that.
Is that your phone?
It's not mine.
Not mine. Well, I have a new phone, so.
So do I.
Great.
I hate it.
If you want to take that call from John McClure, you can.
yeah, I mean,
I didn't recognize it.
You'll be there for the rest?
we haven't had any issues with that. The last thing I want to run by you guys, and this is,
You are just spinning it today.
well,
So we're 35% of the budget yet?
You need new tires?
the tires, well,
New truck?
you would rather us buy new tires.
Tires and radios.
Last year, we bought new rescue equipment that was demo model stuff. And I think, well, you were there when we had our rescue training this year. They do have some more equipment like that. Maxville has went out and spent about $13,000 of their own money on rescue equipment. Their JAWS unit is not extremely bad, but the stuff at Hudson is. We had issues with it twice this year. There's probably, last year we spent $21,000 on that electronic battery-powered rescue equipment. It's gone up a little bit. This is comparable to what we bought last year. And I would like to replace Maxville stuff with that, move their stuff to Hudson, so Hudson has a good unit up there. And then probably next year it would look like we would try to do the same thing for Hudson. Replace their stuff with demo model, battery powered stuff. And that would put Stafford County updated to where nothing is probably older than 5 years old. Right now, Maxville and Hudson have at least 20-year-old rescue equipment.
You lost him.
Yeah.
I roughly figured it with what I brought to you guys today, it'll still leave us roughly $80,000 in our
He
budget
get
for
hold
the
of us
rest
at the
of the
same
year.
time.
Okay. And you're expecting you'll be able to keep some of that back?
Yeah.
That 80, you don't have any more
What kind
expenses?
is it?
We shouldn't have any more expenses.
It's less truckloads. or
Right.
something. So we're down to, when's our physical year in? Your physical year?
December 31st.
Okay, so you got a month left.
Got a month left, you know, and I think we roughly transfer 15, 20,000.
Depends. So we might as well spend it if he's got it instead of
So there's
transferring
no,
it.
do you need to go around and say there's no
Can we
ramming
get
and
some
cramming
COVID
in
money?
trucks?
Well-
Don't fight fire from the grass.
Yeah, yeah, I
Me,
mean,
me and Kurt were both at the,
That was impressive.
at the demo deal, and it's night and day, the difference between having the little gas-powered hydraulic
Yeah.
motors and these units that are just battery powered. I mean,
and
We
I
used
think,
those
I think
a
Rob
couple
can,
weeks ago on a search warrant, and it's impressive. We wouldn't have got into them with the hydraulics, what we had to get in, the safe we had to get into.
they got into a safe with our electronic. I mean, from what I understand, I wasn't there,
Maybe
but it pretty
15
much
minutes,
destroyed the safe.
and yeah.
so sheriff's department's willing to go in 50% on this? It seems like a lot of money, but I do think it's well worth it. It's not something, this is something that we probably won't have to look at again for 10, 15 years.
At least. Yeah, I mean, as far as replacing them, and the thing about the Hearst will warranty them as long as they're not, you know, if something internally breaks in them, for the life of the tool. I mean, so it's not like we have any cost. Now, if we drop it and run over it, that's a different story, but if we're using it and something breaks, it's free of cost to us to have it fixed. And I do know, I mean, $24,000 is a lot of money. New cost on that stuff is just shy of $40,000. So buying demo model stuff is a lot more feasible than.
And that's what these are, as demos?
They're roughly a year old.
So you'll basically, with these three deals, you'll basically have 6 batteries. Each one comes with
Yep.
2 batteries.
Yep.
Do you guys have one of the trucks that these go on wired up in the inverter?
Nope.
You guys just make sure you grab the batteries before you leave, or what?
The batteries, yeah, I mean, and that's one thing we'll probably look at doing is putting 2 extra batteries in that truck and putting an inverter in there. Just so you have them at all times, but typically we carry 3 batteries. Well, and that day that we used them, I don't know if we might have changed 1 battery all day that we were out there for 6 hours cutting with them.
They do quite a bit.
You remember those jacks, the new jacks that were like the square tubing ones? That's Maxville had.
Maxville.
Somebody donated money to Maxville, so Maxville bought themselves a set of those jacks. And you said those jacks were like 16,000?
I think they had roughly right at $13,000 in the stuff that they purchased.
What size engine do those jacks have?
Yeah.
They didn't look all that complicated.
No.
They worked well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we accept the bid for Denko emergency equipment for $24,185.07 for the 3 pieces of rescue equipment, battery powered rescue equipment.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to purchase from Danco Emergency Equipment, what do you call it? Rescue equipment. Yeah, rescue equipment, for a total of $24,185.07. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried.
That's all I really have for you guys today.
Thank
Oh, I did that.
Good.
You know,
Yeah,
nice and easy. And,
Well, we'll see you next year.
well, you know, I tried to stay away from you guys for a while. I haven't bothered you, so, but,
Don't let it all build up again.
we'll get that truck built and put in service.
And as far as for looking at next year, I mean, if we get this truck done, I mean, probably unless a cheap truck tender or something comes available, we probably aren't looking at replacing anything next year, or?
The only thing that we would do would be a tender for Maxville, which is still on the list.
Okay.
Outside of that, we aren't replacing. I think our truck status is now finally good enough that we don't need to do anything else next year. And I cut my budget, you know, a little more than for next year, so. And I think our expenses have been very small this year, and hopefully that continues next year. So, but that's all I got. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes of November 4th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from November 4th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Bill's not coming?
Gonna go into executive session.
Yeah, could we do our executive session?
Yep.
Make a motion that we go into executive session for 20 minutes for attorney-client privilege. Present will be the commissioners, Anita, Rob, and Bryce.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session for attorney-client privilege for 20 minutes, including those that were mentioned in the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. You can't read, can you?
All right, hey, we'll make this pretty short this morning.
Is it good news, bad news?
Well, it's good news in some regards, but one of the things that we've talked about historically that was probably gonna pop up here before long has popped up for the future years, so, we'll run through a couple of reports real quick. In front of you is this year's, basically, it's called your aggregate report. Utilization summary shows you what your program is on the left there with your different contracts for the medical plan, all your enrollment throughout 2020 for the months. If you
Sit up there by Todd, you can see that. New commissioner.
Oh, yeah.
I did see that, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, he ought to
This
see
is what
these
the
figures.
city, this is what it costs, this is how many of our employees.
Scariest part of the whole year.
I agree.
Yeah. So, real quick, it's a self-funded health plan, been in place for about 22 years, I believe. And it's worked very well over the years, allowed to build a very nice reserve, which we'll talk about that reserve a little bit today. It's really probably getting on the high side of where it needs to be at this point. So this is just claims here.
I do have one
Yes.
question. On your up here where it says you're single, your employees with a spouse, and then employee,
Children,
okay, employee, children, and family. So you have more numbers down here than what we have employees. So if one, like somebody on their family plan, if they have 5 kids, are those all counted on this 139?
that is not. That is just a cumulative total of each month. If you look at January, there were 14 families, February 14 families, so if you add all of those up, that gets to 139 total for the year. You divide that by 10, and you're averaging 13.9 families per month
Okay.
right now. That's just showing.
Oh, it's per month and then you add all the months up. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And those numbers that are at the very top, that's what you set aside, that's what the reinsurance carriers tells you, hey, you need to set this aside to help pay for your claims this next year. So that's $674.51, that's what you're setting aside each month based off like on each single, 21 singles, you're setting aside $674. Each family, you're setting aside $2,000 for claims expense. And so then you look so far this year, then you've put a little over $500,000 into that claims account so far. So then if we go to the bottom, you can see what you've paid in claims that have occurred this year. You paid $310 so far on medical, $82 on pharmacy for a total of $392. So for this year, right now, we're running very well. We've had $392,000 versus the $573. So the reserve has grown. Of that $392, we have also what's called an aggregating deductible. And I'll talk about that when we look at the quotes a little bit more, but basically that's a one-time deductible of $50,000 once somebody has hit your specific level of $45,000. So you cover the first 45 on every individual, and then if somebody goes over that 45, you have basically bought another deductible that's in place. It's an umbrella over the entire group. So the first 50 you have to pay after that. And why do we do that? I'll talk about that when we look at the quote. We do that because it saves you premium, $50,000 of premium to take on $50,000 of risk throughout the year if it happens. So it saves hard dollars off the top. But we'll come back to that. Right now, you don't have anybody who's over their specific level. Excuse me, you do have one person that's over your specific level, but you haven't got into the reinsurance carrier's pocket yet. We've got one individual that has a higher specific than the $45,000. You can see that there were some dollars that were paid last year by the reinsurance carrier for last year's contract in here. The outside contract, that pays for like case management. That's what it is. And so far we've got one person that's in case management on the plan. So really, I mean, you're running very, very well for this current year. That's definitely good news. on that front. The reserves run this year. And I believe that's at about 1.9 is where it's at right now, is what we discussed. And so if you flip the page real quick, well, before we do that, right now you have, we consider large claimants anybody over 50% of their specific, and right now you've had 3 of them this year. You've got one at $35,000, one at $24,000, and one at $60,000. One employee and 2, a dependent spouse and a dependent child. So one that's gone over that, that $45,000 by about $15,000 so far. Okay, the next page is your dental. This is the small numbers of everything that you have. And you can see the premiums for the dental is at the top. You can see the enrollment is very similar. I think you have it with your medical, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's the same enrollment. You can see that there's about 12,500 put into the account, but so far you spent about 13.2. So it's a little bit upside down, but we're talking about really low dollars here. So it's still, I mean, it's running pretty well. As long as we're not seeing that number on your size of group and everything at 150%, I don't think we ever need to do anything with the funding on that, because it comes out of the same pool as your medical does. It's running well. Okay? So here's where we're at right now. So as I mentioned, we've got a couple of, we've got one situation going on that has kind of pushed us back with the reinsurance carriers of trying to understand where we're at on those claims. And so right now I have, the numbers you see in front of you are firm from the carriers, but I have 2 other carriers that are interested in your group, so I think these numbers are even going to get better. And then probably be able to lock this in the very first part of December. But I think we're going to get better on these. But as you look across here, you have your current quote right
The
here.
first line is the current one?
The first column is your current, is what you have right now. And if you look at option 2, or option 1, excuse me, that's just matching what you have right now with your current carrier. And you can see that the specific premium, what you pay for that $45,000 of coverage, or over the $45,000, is not changing. The annual aggregate premium, which is the aggregate, is the all of the claims in here. That's where you get this, what's called an attachment point. So once you would ever hit this attachment point of 695, or going next year down a little bit to 692, if you ever hit that attachment point, that's when the reinsurance carrier would start. So you're never on the hook for if you had 20 people go out, or 50 people go out and spend $45,000, that's over $2 million. You will never have to pay that $2 million because you've got this cap as a group that you won't spend more than $695,000. Okay? For claims under it. You can see the admin, there's a little bit of increase at benefit management, 25 cents admin. Down through there a little bit on the dental. Each year the inpatient pre-cert goes up, the PPO goes up a little bit. So we look at that and we see that got about $1. It costs about, next year's gonna be about $1.35 more per employee per month on that, which equates to about $800. If we go down, so right now if we go down and you just look at apples to apples, you are going to be max cost actually about $1,600 less next year than you were in the current year on this. Now, as you know, each year we have to get approval from the stop-loss carriers that they cover or that they're okay with everybody being at that $45,000 level. Well, if you flip the page, this is what we're still working on. We've got 2 individuals. Of course, I did not put names on there, but we have two situations that, and it says final, that's not final yet on there, but you see what their current, what we call them lasers. Laser is where they could do a reinsurance carrier can do one of 2 things. They can either build in the rates or the exposure into your premiums that $183,000, they can either build it into that, or they can say, you know what, you pay for it if it happens, we won't build it in, but if it happens, you pay for it throughout the year. Many reasons why that's a positive. You know, like this year, we have 2 of them currently on the claim, two of those lasers. Neither one of them are gonna hit. So if they would have built it in this year into your premiums, you would have lost in that regard. But because we're now not going to hit these, or it doesn't appear like we're gonna hit these unless something happens in the last month and a half here, it's a good move to have that. Now, the very first one, that is the one that I was mentioning that we have, you know, where it said should require on the current, that has started. That process has started on the current right there on the first one. And so what we're working on right now is a process that I will bring to you that I think will limit the exposure for the county on that. Excuse me. And then on the second one, there's also another process where we're looking at it, and that's only if that prescription drug would start back up this next year. And because it's still being taken, but it's in lower doses. And if it kicks back up again to where it was before, because that's the same one that's been on there for years now. So we're, I mean, technically we're in really good shape, but these are exposures to your group right now for this next year, because these numbers that we just looked at, these numbers don't contain, these numbers here don't contain that additional risk. But we have, that's why and we've talked about this in the past, that's why you have the reserves that you have, is to, should have brought water. Sorry. Todd, you got a question?
How much do we have in our reserves now? Is it on this
A
page?
little over 1.9 million.
And we're transferring 181,000 barring anything, because we've spent,
1.9 mil.
your 392, 573 minus 392 is 181,000, so about,
Yeah, but we transferred more into it than what we spent out of it.
yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up 182 from the beginning of the
Yes.
year this year. It's right now based
And how
off your
much total
reports.
do you have?
1.9 million.
So that's about 10%. Is that pretty normal,
It's,
or on average? Or-
you want to have, I mean, the rule of thumb is you want to have about 1.5 times what your annual claim spend would be. And so you're above
So
that
we're
right
above
now.
that, yeah.
You right now are probably more about 2 to 2.5 times.
But you also have to think, we're all getting older too.
Yeah.
So
In this
that's kind of
situation,
why we built that up. Yes, I'm getting old and I may have a heart attack. Anyway,
yeah,
that's kind of why we've let that build up.
Okay.
Just,
and there's been swings in that
Mhm,
number, that
there have.
1.9. You know, we go through, and like right now, you've got an additional 207, well, outside because you take off the first 45,000 of that 275 number. So you've got $230,000 of risk that you could pay if this ends up being the number that we have to go with for this next year. So that 230, if it happens, you can just kind of count on that 1.9 to come down to 230, and then depending on what happens with everybody else, that 230, and that if you have another year where you're to the good 180, $200,000, it'll wash out, and your reserves will stay the same. But if you have several of these large claims pop up, then that's when that reserve starts to come down a little bit. But right now, based off of what you're funding right now, I wouldn't change what you're doing. I'm gonna come back to you here in 2 weeks with the final, what doesn't change again, these numbers that are on here are not going to change. What could still change in 2 weeks is I think we can improve, well, I apologize, I'm gonna go back. These numbers, they're not gonna get any worse than what they are. The only thing they're gonna get is better, and I think we're gonna have, I've got 2 other reinsurance carriers that, it's always fun when you get 2 that want it, and then the incumbent's gotta do something and make, I mean, cause they're giving you a flat renewal, that means you probably could have got a reduction. And I'm seeing that from a couple other carriers. So when I get those guys finalized, that's gonna allow me to go back to the incumbent and say, hey, you gotta be here if you wanna write the business. But what the main thing we're still working on is how do we limit the exposure on these two individuals? And I think we've got some things that we are working on some things.
Do we need to go into executive session and discuss non-elected personnel on these lasers?
No.
Is that when you're gonna discuss
You
that? Okay.
Yeah, just,
Yep.
we know they're there and we,
The dialysis is probably gonna continue though.
Yes.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Now, I think last year when you were here, you had said that if you start dialysis, then you become eligible for Medicare.
Absolutely. Now, that,
But it's this person's choice to whether to stay on the county or to go on to the Medicare?
Medicare becomes a supplement if you're not 65 and there's a specific for end-stage renal disease, that there's a specific Medicare for that. And you can elect that, which this member has elected that, I was told this week. I'm still trying to make sure that that is the case. But for 30 months, that member would still be primary on this plan and secondary on Medicare. And so then, but at the end of 30 months, so we have 2.5 years, basically from the start date, that I believe it'll be April of 2023, then all of a sudden Medicare becomes primary and you're not on the risk for anything anymore. I say anything, there's still other things that can happen. Now, there's also another program, if you recall, that 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we put into place that may help us on some of the costs associated with this with this treatment that's ongoing, and that's what we're working on getting in place with the provider right now at Benefit Management, MedWatch, who does the case management. We're all working together to try to lower that cost as low as it possibly can on a per month basis. So there's a chance that we can lower that considerably by $150,000, that cost. And we just have to get that program in place and get it working. And the member's been very, has worked with us so far on it.
Is that the program where we wanted people to try to use generic medicine?
No, this only has to deal with dialysis.
Okay.
It's a dialysis program, but great question, yes. And people are doing a very good job on the prescription side of things
Yeah.
right now. So I think it's very good news. From a budget standpoint right now, you would not need to change what you're doing for this next year. And I think we're even going to lower those numbers even more, where you're not gonna have to fund any more than what you have currently, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think it'll be even lower once I get everything wrapped up. So, which in this market right now is wonderful. And I will tell you, being self-funded right now, compared to what's going on in the fully insured markets with 10, 20, 25% increases pretty much across the board, is not fun to deliver. And being that, you know, I've had this going for so long, you guys are in great shape. But again, as Anita pointed out, 3 or 4 or 5 big claims over the next several years can flip that around. So you can't take away from, you know, still strategically making sure that you don't cut into your reserves too much, but you got some room right now.
Sounds good.
I've talked with a couple other businesses that have changed their insurance a little bit. And they basically went from offering single, to employee with the spouse, employee with the family, and just basically increased the dollar per hour wages, and then just offered single plans. And then if a person has a family, then they have the opportunity to pay for that out of their own pocket. You know, because the way it is now, I mean, if I'm a single guy, I'm basically you guys are funding or the county's funding $674. If Bryce is working for the county and he's got a family, the county's funding $2,000. So basically, if me and Bryce are doing the same job, Bryce is making $1,500 more a month than I am because he's got a family. Does that make sense?
So you're saying the businesses are picking up the full tab for the single?
They're instead of offering single family, you know, they'd offer one, but then to make it more fair to where everybody's making the same, or to help out, because it is gonna be a bigger burden on the family, you know, pay them $2 an hour more, $3 an hour more, and only offer one plan.
So the family's not covered, just the employees?
Well,
Just
the family can
If
be
they
covered.
want.
If
You just
they-
have to pay for it.
have to
If they-
pay for it.
Oh.
Because right now, I mean, as far as I see it, it's kind of unfair to the single guy because he's doing the same job as the guy that's family plan, but, so I mean, if you raise everybody's salaries a little bit, then the single guy is gonna end up making more, you know, the family guy, if he wants the plan, he would have to, is that something that's possible with this?
Oh, you guys have
You can
the
do whatever
ability
you
to
want.
do whatever you want on that. I will tell you from a,
And I'm not saying we're gonna make a decision today, that's just something for everybody to think about.
here's where I will tell you that most employers, and I'm lumping let's separate. Most municipalities still are doing what you guys are doing right now, how you're doing it, when you talk about paying what's the percentage you pay, or that they pay on employee-only coverage?
$50 a month,
They pay 50, and on family,
$250.
$250. So they're paying roughly, probably 10% of a family, and they're paying 5%, and they're paying 5% on a single, roughly, in a worst case scenario type thing. I will tell you that in all industries put together, lumping everybody together, most people where you're at right now from a single standpoint isn't too far off. It probably is more like 10 to 15% that a member pays for their coverage. But it varies. I mean, it's all over the place. But from a family standpoint or having independence, most people anymore do not cover a whole lot of that. In just like what you're talking about right now. A lot of the groups that I work with will cover maybe 50% of it. There are still groups that cover a good chunk of it, but they're few and far between. And they're mostly municipalities that do that. Now, historically, the reason why has been because in a municipality setting, your wages are a lot less than what they are in the private industry.
So what you're saying, so I can follow you, is instead of a family plan costing an employee $250, it might maybe to raise it to $350 or $450?
No, I mean, I would tell you right now, in a lot of the non-municipality groups, a family, if they had these same rates, they'd probably be paying 40-50% of them.
But
The
this,
employee would be paying 40 or 50% if they wanted their family covered by the plan.
So say $1,000.
And I'll tell you that there's a lot of, there's not a lot of dependence on plans anymore because of that reason. And so they're either going uninsured or they go out and try to find it individually, and it's almost unaffordable there as well, is the problem from an individual standpoint. So really, for the most part, then you're gonna look at members, if you went to a norm of covering 50% or raising it to $500, I mean, even on that, you're gonna start seeing a number of your families and children and those kind of things, employee children only start coming down, probably, on your plan, and most of those aren't going to be able to find other insurance.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, I mean, when you talk to people, Todd, absolutely, that's what's happening in the market. I mean, it's coming down. I think the only other group that I have in private industry that covers, I've got one other group that covers probably about 80% of the family, and the only reason why they're doing that is because the original owner, who has passed away now, that was the one thing that he wanted to make sure didn't change for his people, and they've kept that in place, and I don't know how much longer they're gonna be able to do that.
I mean, I like the idea of everybody having the good health insurance. I would like for us to try to figure out something to make it more fair to where everybody's making the same money. I don't know.
Well, but if you
I could see
think
where-
back that some of these people that are single on the plan now, or their employee spouse, at one point they were family, and we're getting that benefit as well. Now, you may have some single people that never would have had a family on here and those kind of things, but, you know, over the years, it plays out. And plus, if you're single at 25 on the plan, getting it for $50, or you're single at 55 on the plan, you're using the plan a lot differently.
Yeah.
And since you're a self-funded health plan, this person, even though they may have their single on it, they're probably, there's a chance they're using a whole lot more money than the family plan person who's on 25. So, I mean, and I don't know how you'd ever make that really fair, other than if you did do what you did and just raise it. I mean, you'd have to do exactly what you said, raise your hourly wages, and then just figure out what percentage they would have to pay on the other plans, but.
On this second page, on this column here,
Uh-huh.
is that what it's costing us, what the plan costs?
That's what you're setting aside. Remember, you usually don't come
We
even
put-
close to spending that.
Okay.
Yep. That's what, those are the numbers that Nita uses right here, right?
Mhm, yep.
When you go to do your funding.
Yep.
And that's the number that we've talked in the past, that since you have the reserves that you have, that if you ever needed to back off of those numbers a little bit, you could do that and earmark some of your, like this year, you could have changed by about $180,000 so far this year, and you would have been net neutral, your reserve wouldn't have gone up, you'd have stayed the same, and you could have maybe used that 180 somewhere else. And you have a year or two that you could probably do that, and if your reserve starts coming down a little bit, then you gotta say, okay, wait a second, maybe we need to put a little bit more back in there. That's exactly what, Meade County is another county that I work with, and last year, they needed they have a nice reserve like you guys do, and so they lowered these numbers by 20%, it was maybe 22%, they lowered these numbers, and then they just earmarked out of their reserve to cover that if they needed it, and they used that, I can't remember how, it was a couple $100,000 they used to do something else with. So you always have that ability for funding purposes to fund less than what's on this paper. Now, if you didn't have the reserves you had, I'd say don't do it. But because you have the reserves you have, you can do that, you just gotta be careful and really start watching it.
I would hate to cut into reserves.
We've
so
always
we'll
been
go-
leery of doing that, because if we cut 20,000 out of it this year and next year we need it, we're gonna have to cut 20,000 out of somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, if we've
That's
got,
why we've always just kept it
well,
pretty.
we've got it high, I think we might as well keep our reserves high as best we can, because the reserve's there when you have an emergency.
I mean, you never know.
Well, there could be a year, I mean, you get somebody like, say, hemophiliac, and all of a sudden you spent $800,000. But again, always remember, you guys are in a great place because you're under 50, we're under 50, aren't we still?
No, we're like at 51.
51, oh, that's right, we're at 51.
Yeah, we're gonna
Just
fire a
over.
couple people.
That's right.
And I don't think these guys should be counted,
Yeah, I don't either,
but they are.
yeah.
You said the single plan, they pay 50, the family's 250?
Yeah, employee with child, I think 175, employee spouse is 125, I think. I can look and tell you for sure.
So like if you go to the doctor, you just pay a certain amount, I mean,
Copay,
We don't have copays.
oh, that's right, it all goes to the deductible.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
so the employee pays nothing for any
Well,
medical,
until you get to your deductible, Meg, you pay 100%.
the employee?
Yeah, you have to pay your deductible.
Yeah,
What's the
we don't have
deductible
copays.
per employee?
Let me go get one. I don't do that.
You know what, it's not, you can tell me that later.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a summary, and I didn't bring the summary either of what it is, but there is, I mean, there's,
I don't mess with it.
you know, it's pretty much, it's a pretty standard plan, I would say. Your out-of-pockets, and that's the other thing that's different, is that your out-of-pockets are truly, I wouldn't say you have a Cadillac plan by any means, but you have a very nice plan
It is.
for your members. And it's low cost, I mean, you got low premiums and you got low out-of-pockets compared to the market right now. So,
You know, trying to hire good individuals to work at the county, I mean, I think a lot of people don't look at, you know, they're going, well, I can go here and make $2 an hour more, but they don't realize how good the insurance is, they don't understand that.
They can't buy groceries with benefits.
I'd almost be willing to bet you that if we come up and said, we'll give you $3 an hour raise with no insurance, half of our employees would take a $3 an hour raise.
oh yeah, you're probably right. And then you're gonna have, then you're gonna have, but the problem is going to be, is that then you have only people that have to have the insurance on the insurance.
Yeah.
And if they're the only ones, then those rates continue, and then you just get in a bad cycle.
Let's not do that.
That's why you're the commissioner. Make better decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, are you guys meeting, the first week in December then? Is that, what is that, the second? We're gonna just plan on the second, wrapping this up, and we'll have those final, laser type situations figured out, and hopefully I believe we'll have some lower numbers on the premiums, so.
That's good.
Okay, good. 9 o'clock would be great.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Knowing relatively little about this, but looking for the kinds of expenses the county may have occurred in the past year that can be eligible under a particular state grant, were there any unusual expenses this year related to the COVID pandemic? Probably.
For health, you mean?
Yeah.
There has
We might-
there have not been, I don't think any, on your guys' plan, I think there's been some testing and stuff, but nothing that's been
Nothing.
out of the ordinary, yeah.
Nothing,
That's a great-
even like that would have changed the calculation of your premiums or anything, you know, even in a global sense, not just a sense of a particular person got treatment.
Yeah, I think that, in that regard, I think that there's a load in the rates because of what everybody's calling the COVID hangover, that people are going to go do things this next year that they didn't do this year because elective type stuff. So I guess you could say that the underwriters are factoring that in for this next year in trend, as trend, normal trend this year probably would be 5 or 6%, and it's 8 or 9% because of the COVID. So, you could look at 4 to 5% of any increase, but we're not looking at any increases this year. That's the only problem. I don't know how we would ever figure out how that would be.
Are you, Mike, are you talking about, say, for elective surgery that people will hold off? Is that, okay.
Yeah, they're calling it the COVID hangover is kind of the
okay.
terminology, is that
Okay.
people didn't do things, have not done things this year because either they didn't want to go to the hospital or maybe they got sick with COVID and couldn't go get an elective surgery done or whatever it could be, and they'll do that in 2021.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully if there's a vaccine that works and things clear up, so.
That's what I'm
But
waiting on.
our underwriters at Gallagher do not feel that way, do not believe that it's as big a trend as what some are saying, is that people have still went ahead and did most of the stuff they were going to do here in 2020. They didn't do it in March or April, but they've done it, or May, but they've started doing it more throughout the year, so. But that's a great question.
So
I would love if we
I'll-
could find like $20,000 of the health insurance premiums the county pays that we could have offset in this grant, is what I'm saying, something like that, I don't know, but there may not be an angle to,
It'd be hard to figure.
I don't know
Okay.
how we could.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since he's done.
With the
I make a motion to go into 5 second, or 5 minute recess. No, 5 seconds. 5
All right, thanks,
minutes to recess.
Okay,
We'll recess in 5 minutes.
okay, so
We'll go back in.
We have to turn in monthly reporting of the Spark spending, and the last one was due, last Tuesday? We weren't in session last week, so I went ahead and turned it in. This is the first page of it, the summary of it. And the significant part is, we have only spent, as a county, $254,000 of the $823,000 allocation.
Say
So
that again.
we have only spent $254,000 of the $823,000 allocation. We have $569,000 to go in a month, essentially.
Okay.
Have you
So
notified all these organizations?
I have, yes. And the schools, I think, they're all feeling like they will. City of Stafford, we're gonna have a phone call today. I think
Well, the
they're,
mayor's right there.
I know, we've talked to some degree. I think we're gonna have to see if there's some other things that can be, ways that we can amend it and put some spending into other areas. One of the significant things that we've talked through with both Swindle Jansen, Hawk and Lloyd, and then they in turn have been in communication with Melissa Illy, if I'm pronouncing that right.
yes.
To ensure that they're in agreement that it would not only fit with the Spark parameters, but also the county's audit. If we can shift more of what was planned to be spent into county salaries, there's some of the things that we had kind of earmarked that weren't necessarily definitively ineligible, but they were pushing the gray area. Some housing, City of Stafford has some things that kind of fall into that category too, related to some capital improvements. And I think the thinking is now that if we can put it into an area that's going to clearly be eligible, and then just free up kind of in a way some of the county budget, we're replacing some of the salaries that the county's gonna pay for one way or the other anyway. And then we kind of have unrestricted money to work with. Does that make sense? Okay, so, what I'm right now more clear on is the eligibility for the county to do that. I'm not as clear on whether the cities can also do that, or the school districts. You know, if we can say that, you know, the superintendents have been spending a lot of time making plans this year on this, that 25% of their salary is dedicated to this. I'm not entirely clear about that, but if we can make that work, then I don't think we're gonna have so much trouble getting this all spent. So ask Nita about what salaries we might be able to push into that for a couple of reasons. One of them is, well, the emergency preparedness.
Worker?
Yes, he had submitted a $23,000 expense for a generator. And Swindle Jansen said, we don't think this is gonna pass the test of being sufficiently COVID related. So they kind of kicked that expense out, but we wanna get it covered, you know? So that's a good example of, if we can pay for Phil's salary or Cindy's, you know, and free up some of that money
How about
to
the health department?
And I know the health department, I know, so, heck, I'd put 90% of the health department into that if it were.
We probably could.
What about, I mean, like Nita
Yeah,
has
we
probably spent a
included
ton
that.
I agree. And
answering questions.
Yeah.
What, related to not only just, you know, managing the county's business, but also the whole election kind of stuff.
And then the sheriff's department
I
delivered
didn't
all
think
the
about sheriff.
quarantine
Oh,
orders.
yeah.
Allow commissioners getting phone calls.
Yeah. I got reimbursed for my cell phone.
Wore out my phone, I had
There
to
we
get
go.
a new one.
So did I.
Okay.
Charged my phone
I
to
didn't
it
think,
too.
I like, that's a good idea.
I agree. So.
How about sick leave for
But-
county
So
employees?
Nita, we have kind of an email exchange here. She kind of suggested an allocation that would end up with like $95,000 worth of salary. I'd almost like to see if we can, kind of looking at what expenses were gonna need to make sure we cover. I'd almost wonder if we can find a way to allocate more like 350,000, which might be on the
Well,
aggressive
the-
side, but
This is including the schools, the cities, everything.
it is.
So we
I
have
agree.
to wait till we see if
I-
these schools are gonna spend all of their funding.
Another way of looking at it is if we could be ready with the
Yes,
city, or
yes.
the county salaries.
Yes.
Because if they come in saying, okay, we're going to, and then all of a sudden, December 15th, and they haven't actually given us.
Have you
any-
given them a cutoff of when they need to have theirs spent by?
I don't know that I've given them a firm, I've told them, we need to have these by mid-December, but I also don't know that I have given them a, if you don't turn it in by December 15th, you're not gonna get
Because the
paid.
state didn't expand this December 31st deadline, did
Not
they?
yet, they're saying that they might, but they haven't officially yet.
So are we gonna take janitorial? Because I imagine a big part of her job.
Gosh, good idea. See? I'm not,
And then on the school, like where they quarantine the first grade for 2 weeks in the library? Could they, school have to reimburse the library for renting the library basement from them?
that would be up to the school.
Can they ask?
I mean, would that,
Yeah, I did get a response back very promptly from Josh yesterday, because I just kind of just did a check-in with everyone.
because if they couldn't use the library, they would have to rent it from
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah, I
An
mean,
extra space where the kids can quarantine.
Right, I like your thinking. They have spent 95,000. They've spent more than any other entity that we, outside of the, well, yeah, they have. They're on pretty good track, but I like the idea that if they feel like they aren't gonna fill it, to consider something like that. You know, City of Maxville is one, they haven't spent anything. I've asked them by email and haven't got, I probably just need to follow up with some phone calls and so forth, but I haven't heard anything.
Now,
And
the
Rob
City
told
of
me that he was
Hudson-
absent at the last meeting, so he's not sure either.
City of Hudson has stuff in this run, I'm pretty sure. City of Hudson.
Okay, I
So,
have
but
been,
theirs is $4,000.
City of Seward, haven't heard back, but they were pretty on top of things to begin with. Theirs is
What was their deal?
water well.
They have done that and are running the water line, or the hydrants. That
Okay.
way you can go down and wash your hands at the city park.
You know, it's a little bit of a stretch, but we were gonna put
They have
as
been
few
doing that.
details on that one as we
They've been doing that over
can
the
to
last
not
week.
draw more questioning.
What about, is there provisions on sanitizing the school buses? You know, Phil said something about these aerosol, these machines.
I don't know,
Don't they have to sanitize the buses every?
Yes, my wife's a driver, yeah, they do it after every load of kids.
So do
Everything
they,
else has to be
do they wipe
sanitized.
them or do they fog them? Or-
It's a machine, it's a fog machine.
And
have
they
to go in
bought
there.
those?
Well, they should
Pass
be
them.
submitting.
I would call, I would make a
I would
phone
think.
call.
How would they forget that?
let's see, we've got them.
You know, not everybody's main line of communication is email.
But they should be at the schools.
Philip, ours.
I know.
Like I have 23 emails here that I haven't even looked at.
See, we have to be careful because if we've already used COVID money to buy something, we can't turn it back in for more COVID money.
It's
So,
where, if we can find some
It's-
bigger ticket items
Yeah.
that are easier to like administer, it's a whole lot easier to administer one $25,000 expense than it is $5,500 expenses, and so.
Did the health department turn in their Connex for emergency
Yep.
repair? Okay.
it's out of there.
I saw they switched those out.
Mhm.
Did they deliver the wrong one first?
They didn't have the door cut in it.
Yeah. I know
And so
that.
now she's gonna have the insulation, the wiring, the guy's gonna build shelves for her, and she needs a ramp thing, so we estimate that'd be another 10,000 off of there.
There's one for 100.
Yeah,
So,
What in the
it's,
world?
they're letting them trickle in, but, yeah.
6,000 to Maxville still.
Yeah,
Okay, that one's probably not on.
no, it's not on, because it's, we just did it yesterday.
Yeah, heck, no, try to find something to spend money on.
Well,
I just don't wanna leave it on the table,
Mhm.
And especially if we can, I really, really, really like the idea of putting it into salaries, because then,
So what
in a
do
way
I
that-
have to come up with so that we can put this in salaries?
you know,
Percentage.
Huh?
percentage?
But I have to have documentation, I'm sure.
Well, okay, so like Jamie Kreitzer's been doing at the school, if we just, because it'll also pay
Yeah.
benefits, not just the salary. But I think if we just make a note on there that 25% of the time has been spent on, you know, whatever.
Estimation of how many hours a month you
We'll
spend.
get that ready to have for in the end, if
Okay,
we have
yeah,
X amount.
and I think we can go back to March 1.
What about the senior centers? Maybe they need a fogging machine.
Well, on that note, we have, some of the distribution to some of these senior centers probably do have like an EIN number or something a little more complex. One of the things that's on here that we haven't distributed yet is $18,500 for food assistance to food banks. Well, our food banks are ministerial alliances, which I'm sure have checking accounts, but their overall organization structure is not terribly formal. I don't think they're like submitting 990s at the end of the year to the IRS and things like that. So I'm not sure they're gonna have all of the things that they're looking for. Plus, if this is done on a reimbursement basis, I'm not sure they have $8,000 to go buy something, turn in receipts, so we can give them money. So what I've asked the auditors is whether, like economic development, which is listed as the administrator of that part of the program, and we do have sufficient cash flow to be able to do that. We go and buy gift cards at the 2 grocery stores in the county and give those gift cards to the food banks, or even like the Circles program has submitted some receipts, and that's a good example of one that's like $170. Some of the receipts were paid by an individual, not the organization itself. It's gonna be messy in terms of trying to actually make that fit. If I could just give them gift cards to,
Yeah.
if they'll agree to doing that.
Yeah, she's putting a request in to see if we can do it that way.
You know, the food
That
banks
sounds legitimate to me.
are inspected by the state to make certain they comply with all
Interesting.
the rules and regulations.
They are.
At least they used to be, because Justin Goodnow, when he was here with the state, he would go in and inspect the food banks. So they've got to have some kind of a permit number, and where they have an EIN number is another thing.
She has a whole, you know, like, a whole line of documentation that has to be turned in with each one of these entities, and
The senior center is basically out of transportation for people. We've been looking at new van ways to finance that. Is there any way to tie that in?
Any other transportation they've kicked out, haven't they?
Transportation they kicked out, even for the senior center. Okay. That's a big deal.
And
to
if
some
this-
people.
those are entities we haven't even listed on here. We have cities and schools essentially, but not senior centers, so I don't know whether that would go.
The city owns that bus, right?
I think that's
Yeah.
where
The Sunflower.
You're right,
Yeah.
okay.
I think I
the city
mentioned that early on.
maybe the city
and-
could turn it in.
Actually, now you're triggering memory for me. The seniors are asking for it more than the city is.
I
The
agree.
city
The
owns it.
city's kind of holding back on it, but if they could get free money for it,
Yeah.
it'd be a good use of the money, I think, but.
I thought I read somewhere earlier on that they were kicking out most transportation-related things. But that's been an election ago, so I can.
Yeah.
Well, those people need something to get out and get away and do something.
At a time we're supposed to be staying home.
Yeah.
I'm just, that's
No,
why
I
I would
know.
get kicked out.
Eventually though, for their mental health, they could afford to get out.
But it's supposed to be in use by December 30th.
Yeah.
That's why it's,
If they wear masks, they'll be okay. Wear masks for the,
so I don't disagree. I'm all for the idea of trying to utilize this to, you know, enhance the services of the county, and then county as in lowercase c, throughout the all of us. I'm all for using it as much as we can, but if they're gonna kick out something like that, but we can clearly put it in salary and then use the money that frees up in a more unrestricted way. That, I think that's kind of what we're getting at, even with the generator or I mean, honestly, the county has already issued a $80,000 payment to economic development for the program part in here, which was going to be that element of some housing was the thing that was, and Swindle Jansen has asked us not to put it on these reports yet because they're hesitant. It's enough in a gray area, so all the more, if we can put it into salary.
Money's fungible. Put it somewhere
We
use
need to
it.
put it somewhere that we can transfer it out to get to the
Yeah,
lake.
right,
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to think how we're gonna do it.
right.
Oh.
But that's the easy part. The hard part's getting it through the state. I mean, we can build a separate fund for it if we need to.
Okay. Okay.
You can do that. That'd make it easier to keep track of.
Yeah.
What about the fire department? Do they need protective equipment other than the turnout gear and stuff?
EMS with salaries would be another to add.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't have that many structure fires, do you?
I don't know how fire is officially quarantined.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's eventually COVID.
Well, I was stretching,
I know.
Mask.
EMS though would be good for salaries.
The salaries, yeah. Would they or not?
Higher risk and stuff.
I don't know, have they responded to calls or have they had to
Well-
have they had to develop like plans related?
What,
Okay,
Yeah.
so-
what she said, when I talked to her, that prior to a run, they sanitized,
Yeah.
They
The unit,
sanitize, they
transport, and then they
They have all the
sanitize.
They
equipment.
go in full gear, I mean,
They got
for
all the
any
equipment.
call.
If it's a
Yeah.
COVID response deal, they have to put all the safety
But they're
gear
doing
and
that
everything
anyway.
else, and-
She told us they were doing it anyway,
Yeah.
because they
Okay.
don't
Well,
know.
it's-
That'd be, you get funding for that.
Okay, so there you go, that I can make an argument
Good
around that
percentage
stuff.
on that.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
There's all the COVID notices and everything else the sheriff's office does.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's several hours
Time
every day.
consuming, yeah.
All over the
That's for
county,
sure,
sometimes it's up 2 to 3 of us. So,
Okay,
And you could do the contact tracing, people that spent the time
who does that?
That'd be the health department.
Okay,
initially, but then I think it's reverted to the state.
Well, some of it is, they're still trying to do most of it because the state's dropping the ball.
Well, they hired 70 new people.
Oh, wow.
let's see.
and those people must be like worried about our spin down rate.
Yeah. She's wanting to try to find some part-timers to come in and help over there, but she's not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Can't find part-time help.
Find help. Okay, so that's the major update there. We'll-
That could be totally funded if you had somebody just doing that, contact
Oh,
us.
yeah, I'll have Lisa start working on it. You think 25%?
All the Zoom stuff.
Here's another way of looking at it.
What
How do
number
we,
do you
how do we get to 350?
So is that an iPhone or?
Yeah, it's an iPhone 12
Okay.
mini, and the touchscreen doesn't even work on it.
Okay,
Okay. We'll keep in touch.
They put a case on
Good.
it, you have to
Thank
swipe
you.
it to do anything, or the case covers up where you swipe. They said, oh, we never tried that.
When you get everything here finished.
I was rather toward
There's a
that.
sick leave designed for people that are sick and
We could fund that too. People in quarantine. Sure, go, smart money.
So
That would-
why couldn't you guys close that bathroom down right there to the public?
What was the rest of us supposed to use?
The one upstairs?
Wasn't my call. That's the reason they said she had to quarantine, because she couldn't have her own bathroom.
Who?
Beth,
Might as well tell Beth we're ready to
I
talk
told
about
the man.
it. Or, yeah.
That's why she had to quarantine, because she couldn't have a separate bathroom for her, so
She wasn't quarantined because she had close contact?
Well, yes,
with it?
but if she could have.
To do a modified work.
With modified,
Oh.
if we would've had a bathroom, she could
All
have.
right.
But you're opening a can of worms if you go along with it,
Yeah, I'm just leave it the way it is.
so.
But it is slightly unfair when because they didn't cause the quarantine.
But if I'm a county employee and I like have 14 days off, I guarantee you I could be in close contact 4 or 5 times, get 2 months off.
There's gotta be a limit to it anyway.
Sorry. Everything is hard. Okay, I just wanted to see what we could do about Beth not having to use 56 hours of sick leave due to her being exposed at work from me. I don't feel like it's fair that she should have to use her sick leave for that. Sorry, I'm out of breath. And yes, we've had 80 hours of paid sick leave in the spring when we were shut down and we staggered. And I assume that was my choice to do that. I don't think it was you guys' mandatory decision or anything like that. I felt like it was the right thing to do at the time, but at the time did not realize, I mean, who knew what was going to happen? Did not realize that she would not get that again if she got quarantined or sick or whatever. So I just wanted to see if there was anything you guys could do or what you thought.
How would you avoid opening up the can of worms though, that everybody all of a sudden gets quarantined just so that they get
Well,
paid?
I agree, but I think it should be a case-by-case basis.
Who's gonna decide that?
Well, I don't know. She was
No,
quarantined by the health department
I
in the
know.
state of Kansas.
But anybody could do that.
But she also did not, I mean, she got exposed by coming to work. She didn't go out eating.
I can't believe the health department wouldn't give her modified quarantine when they gave other people modified quarantine. As far as shutting that bathroom down, the office couldn't.
We
even
talked
cover it.
about that, but the only options were for her to come in before hours, office hours, or courthouse hours, leave after courthouse hours, and not use the restroom.
Because I know other modified quarantines
Uh-huh.
haven't been that strict.
That's what I was told. And then I asked Beth if you would want to do that. I would not push that on anyone. I said, I'm not gonna make you do that. How are you gonna go in your office for 9 hours all day long, shut the door behind you, and,
I'm just saying, put a piece of yellow tape across that hallway there.
well,
That's her bathroom.
it's said, it's already done, I mean, obviously.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
How do you,
Yeah.
I mean, if, when you talk to, about a modified quarantine with the health department, I mean, maybe we could have them come in and visit with us.
How do they qualify for a modified?
I don't know, but there's been some very lenient modified quarantines.
The quarantines overall are just,
I
Basically
even-
to where if you can get into your place to work without.
I even asked if she could go use the fourth floor restroom, which is rarely used by anyone, and we could just maintain that as a quarantine restroom for anybody if that happens again. But they said no, because she'd
the
have
health
to go.
department said no?
Emily said no because, and I'm not blaming her, I totally agree with it. She'd be walking through the halls, the restroom would have to be clean, someone would be in there cleaning, that kind of thing.
But if this
It would
restroom
have
right
to
here
be,
was shut
well,
off.
and that's our only handicap bathroom.
Yeah.
This one right here?
No, the one on fourth
Upstairs.
I'm
floor.
still talking about this one.
How, you'd have to post somebody by that door to keep people out of it.
Yeah.
Put yellow tape?
It wouldn't stop them. Trust me, I've been here 34 years.
Well, I'm not,
It wouldn't stop them.
I'm opposed to, I mean, we've got that's the way, I mean, we kind of set the guidelines. I'm not willing to change, at least my opinion.
I think it would open up a can of worms, somebody could just walk in and then go tell them, I need to be quarantined. They want 2 weeks off or whatever.
Well, I mean, I agree, you can't police
It'd be-
everybody.
It'd be hard.
But if we start doing a case-by-case scenario, we're really gonna open up a can of worms. Well, why'd you do it for this person, why not that? I would say if we have another case in the courthouse, the health department ought to come in here and talk to us about
things we can do as far as modified quarantine, which that doesn't help Beth, but when she was being that hard line on you guys should have come to us then and we could have jumped.
We couldn't because we were quarantined.
I don't think I'll catch it over the phone.
Well,
We don't
okay.
need to have you present, just tell us
Okay,
what's going on
but-
and then we can call Emily and
Right,
then we can
and
talk about it.
honestly, at the time, I was sick. I was not,
You weren't thinking about that?
no, I was thinking about trying not to pack up alone, so.
It's just,
Anyway, I just had to try.
I understand what
I
you're
don't feel
saying.
like it's fair, but, you know,
I would almost agree it's not, but how do you ever administer anything like that? And it just opens up all kinds of worse scenarios.
yeah. I agree. And, yeah, I
We
get it. I just
we
had to
can-
try for her because I will fight for my
We can think of
employees'
something like
rights.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
if it happens again, we need to try to get something done before, not afterwards.
yeah. Okay. And then I didn't discuss this with Nita or tell her I was gonna talk about it, but since I'm in here, I'm gonna talk about it. With the COVID funds, I applied for funds to start a new program called Remote Access Printing and E-Search, which my title companies, oil companies, attorneys, any researcher could get, and it's all gonna go through CIC's server farm. We'll be able to pay a subscription daily, monthly, or yearly, and get in and look for names, records, basically everything. It's all very secure. It goes through their server farm, won't have anything to do with us. My subscription fees I haven't really set yet. I'm still kind of considering what I have available for them to look at and pull up to try to come up with a fee. Some counties are charging, $1,500 a year, things like that. I'm not gonna be that high. I just don't feel like that's fair for our size of county. But I just let you know that that's something CIC is gonna get us going with. Not only that, now everything that I have will be backed up on their server farm as well. So
Sounds good.
anyway, just let you know.
So
that's
will
it.
you maybe be able to get some of that under coronavirus? Because
We've
it's,
already paid for it.
It's already paid for with
Okay.
this, with the
We paid it
funding.
out.
what would that cost the county per year?
For me,
Yeah.
I don't have my thing with me. It was gonna be about 3,000. Honestly, I could go look.
No, it don't matter, but then,
But I'm gonna get a
But she
subscription
will make
fee.
that with her subscription fee.
yeah,
My subscription fees will pay for it. And not only do they pay a subscription fee, I can set a per page copy fee, probably most likely 25 cents. They'll be printing from their own printers at their office or home or whatever. And it keeps track of all of that, and the money all goes through CIC, and then they send me a check.
So will that be for like these lease hands that wanna come in and look at the books? The books are on the computer to where they can sit at home and do it? They don't have to be in here in the
Saves
office.
you a lot of
getting-
That's how we can
It will.
swing it through COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll keep it's, work
So are
from
you gonna
home.
make it mandatory that some of them have to use
No,
that?
no, I wouldn't.
I know you
Okay.
have a couple of shows.
No, it won't,
gladly use it.
it won't be mandatory, but it's gonna be a big help for us and all those other people. I mean, I get
Some
guys
of the
from
old timers won't, but
back east,
No, but
Wichita a lot, Oklahoma,
some of them
Texas,
don't want to
and
travel.
as much as I love to have my guys or my people come into my county and possibly spend some money, it's just not feasible anymore. Plus with COVID, I'd rather them just stay out, so.
so have you guys scanned all those books?
We've got almost everything scanned. Yeah, we work on that in our spare time. I index all the older documents. I'm in 1982 right now, I think. And Beth does the scanning. So we have almost everything, almost all our oil and gas, assignment and release, all the deeds, miscellaneous and royalty. The only thing we didn't even start on was our mortgage books because they're hardly ever looked at, those old mortgage books, but we'll eventually get to them.
Okay.
So, okay, that's all.
Thank you.
On our, on the health department, Phil had talked about getting a freezer for this,
The KDHE's saying to hold off on that.
okay? Because I know one of them says it has to be kept 70 below, and then the other one The last one that they came out said it's just basically a regular refrigerator.
Why do
They're
they
saying
want
to
to
hold
hold
off
off?
on that, because they don't, I don't think they would know enough about this vaccine to know exactly what they need. So that's not on the table anymore to buy one.
So have they had any kind of guidelines as far as if they come out with a vaccine, the health departments or counties are gonna get this much percentage of your,
No,
see, that's what would be nice if the county health department would come in and talk to us at least once a month.
it's gonna do,
I don't think they know.
Yeah.
once it gets to the US, I mean, once the supply is there, it's gonna go to the large cities first. But first of all, it's gonna go to the hospitals and the
Right,
healthcare
and nursing
workers.
homes.
I would think nursing
But it's
homes.
gonna be the whole world.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be just the US.
I guess all I'm asking is if the health department's had any kind of contact with this stuff.
You know, I think.
And I guess the point I'm getting at is when they haven't come talk to us in the middle of a pandemic for 4 months, and I got people asking me questions, and I say, I don't know, because our health department doesn't report to us anymore. But,
It's purely speculation at this moment. I mean, the thing has, you know, the trials have been broken, and they're looking at it, but then it's gonna be late December before it even goes through the safety committee. And then after that trial is broken, they're gonna have to look at the safety stuff for the following 6 weeks.
Do you think those US companies though want to take care of the United States first?
I don't think so.
You know, it's going to World Health Organization, it's gonna go to Brazil, it's gonna go.
I don't agree with that.
Well, I know, but it's a pandemic. It's not just US exclusive.
Don't send it to China.
No,
I'm sure China would have come up with it first, they'd be sending it worldwide.
They've got
Yeah, we'd be the only ones that are sending it worldwide.
I guess my main deal is we've got a lot of questions and,
You want me to have her come up next week? If you
yeah, it
can.
would be
I know
nice.
they're swamped.
Did you call her the other day when I asked you about the, updates?
No, I didn't, because I was.
It came out about 5 minutes after I called you,
A
so.
computer that wouldn't work and
So how many,
employees yelling and.
so how many cases do we have now that can, not
There
just
was
active?
10 new ones between Friday and Monday, but Monday's report didn't come out till Tuesday afternoon, so there should be another one today. But there was,
30.
I think the only thing you could pay attention to is how many it increased from the time we report before. That's what, because
Did you deliver a bunch yesterday?
active cases are coming off all the time.
Is that when you were in here with that
Active cases were
stack?
down,
Yeah.
Part of that big
but
stack.
there was 10 new ones.
And that was only half a stack. You had the other half.
How many did you deliver yesterday?
Oh,
I had 12 notifications yesterday.
Of quarantine.
Quarantines and actually positives.
You remember how many positives or
About a fourth of them. on
3 of them?
or- There was about 12.
So when you figure out how
26.
much money
I
you
think it was
spent,
30 some.
are you gonna just
33
figure
active cases.
An
And it
hour
went from
per
34 down to
quarantine
33.
plus mileage?
I guess more came
Plus
off than
vehicle
what
wear?
went on.
I
for
mean,
the
you might as
first
well
time
figure
for a
that
while.
And I always
realistically?
look at the.
Really, I mean, because it's not just one person. It was just me at one time, but now
It was
it's
insane.
gotten to the point I've had that everybody else has been.
Because that's above and beyond
You're
what
a
you
lot
guys would
better off
normally
getting out
do,
of
so you need to be
quarantine if you have
reimbursed,
it,
because that
rather
is
than-
basically
This is-
taking,
It's not our duty.
yeah, it's taking money out of your budget that you shouldn't have to spend.
Yeah, we're just helping out and things like, yeah, we're assisting the health department with that stuff, so it's an added cost on.
So I'd ask Carolyn what kind of documentation she needs for that, to where you guys can get reimbursed for that.
Okay.
That shouldn't be terrible hard to keep track of if you're making a run to document that.
Yeah, 55 cents a mile.
Yeah.
What do you think, Julie?
Crazy. Crazy world.
Well,
I'll tell you the one thing that, here's what bothers me. A mother can get sick and her 5-year-old kid is living at home with her. And after 10 days, she can go back to work, but she's gotta find a babysitter for the next 10 days after she goes back to work for her 5-year-old
14
kid.
days.
It's 24 days for the kid. It's her 10 plus 14. And the kid has shown no symptoms, or if they did, didn't even know they had it. But she can't go back to work because she's got 2 weeks that she's got a babysit. That's just not right. But that's KDHE guidelines, that's not our health department that's doing that, that's statewide that way.
You're better off catching it, you can get back to work faster.
Yes, you need to catch it, that's what's insane about it. And then you can have that same mother that has a sibling that has the very same symptoms, and they go get tested,
First
and
part
it
of the
comes
year,
up
I had
negative,
one, and I
and all of a sudden that kid that you know is sick is going back to work. It ain't right. I mean, how do you, and like Todd, you know, you get phone calls from people like that, how do you explain that to them? It's not explainable. I'm tired of it.
I can tell you that. Get people mad at something you don't even, all you can say is, I can't explain it to you, I don't know. But my cousin is the health department in Edwards County, she says all you can do is tell them what they tell you to say, she can't explain it either, you know, I mean.
So you got anything new for us, Julie?
Yeah, but I left it out in my car because I figured I would do it next week. It's
Did you
just,
put it to memory?
well, I was gonna invite you to come over and do a land bank tour, but I have the presentation. I gave my second land bank tour to a group, my second group from across the state of Kansas, and have updated. We had another house donated, and I have packets that have details of how the land bank can help different situations, so.
Anybody else have anything else? Will adjourn.